Hey everyone, having a Bethany Day Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. Locked myself out of my car, broke a camera lens, Calchuchesta's still alive, but hey, we're gonna tough it through this video anyway. But you know what, we don't even really gotta tough it through this video because it's a very nice album we're talking about here. As you can tell, it's the new Sun Kil Moon record. Common as light and love are red valleys of blood. Now, Sun Kil Moon, if you didn't know, is a musical project masterminded by singer-songwriter Mr. Mark Kozelek, who you might remember from the Red House Painters, or the film Almost Famous, or that one song where he told the band The War on Drugs to suck his cock. It's no secret that the third act of Mark Kozelek's musical career has been eventful, polarizing, some of which seems to stem from his naturally sour and curmudgeon-y demeanor. Though on his last album, Universal Themes, it was painfully clear that he was trying to elicit some of these reactions from his actions and his lyrics, whether it be through insensitive stage banter or his adversarial stance that he's taken with a lot of the music press, for which he's been labeled an asshole, a jerk, a sexist. On the song Lone Star on this very album, he talks about being banned or prevented from playing a show in San Antonio because of this sexist label being thrown on him. And I don't know if I fully agree with that label. I mean, Mark Kozelek is certainly rude. Maybe his biggest flaw is that he doesn't have a filter. But this is simultaneously his greatest strength on this album. And this is nothing entirely new at this point for Mark. I mean, this is what people love about records like the recently released Benji, an album filled with very sad songs about getting older and mortality, laced with tons of personal stories about Mark's life and his youth. But then with the next Sun Kil Moon record, Mark presented a challenge, a change of pace, getting even more raw and ramblier with his storytelling. I couldn't quite tell if the lukewarm reception to this album was due to this being more difficult to digest in comparison with Benji, or if it was because of all of the enemies across the music world that Mark had made over the past year. I wasn't totally crazy about the record. Personally, it felt more meandering than Benji. A lot of Mark's diatribes, which felt almost stream of consciousness a lot of the time, lacked conclusion. Some of the linear, groovy instrumentals got stale after a while. A couple of them went ultra aggressive with distorted guitars and Mark shouting or screaming at the top of his lungs, making the lyrics kind of unintelligible. But on Common as Light, I think this is the album where Mark refines the formula that Universal Themes was testing. Again, we have songs on this record that are very story-centric, very narrative-heavy, but this time around, I think Mark's musical monologues have more focus. They have more purpose, and Mark brings some diversity here, kind of performing in a mix of singing, spoken word, and tracks where he's almost rapping. The instrumentals, I think, are more interesting too, each track being more patient and linear than the next, with a slew of different musical styles crashing into one another, whether it be folk music, which is painfully clear from all the acoustic guitars and the storytelling, indie rock, which comes through in a lot of the groovy, twangy instrumentals, which have a bit of an early Modest Mouse flavor to them, hip-hop, which pours through in a lot of the looped and very groovy beats. A lot of the beats or instrumentals on this record are heavily centered around the drums and the bass, not quite as much electric guitar or acoustic guitar leading the way on some of these cuts. And I would say there's almost a post-punk vibe to some of the linear songwriting and raw energy behind these tracks. Kind of reminds me of a band like The Fall. Now, the lyrics on here also have a nice range. We have tracks that are painfully personal, just introspection to the extreme, as it seems like Mark delivers every internal thought he ever had throughout 2016. And then to match that, we have tracks that are about a wide array of larger, more public topics, terrorist attacks, technology, Donald Trump as president, that Malaysian flight that went missing, and even transgender bathroom rights. Overall, I think this is a more lyrically compelling album, a more musically compelling album. The only thing that makes this record a challenge is that Mark is done with these tracks when he's done with them. May take 5 minutes, may take 7 minutes, may take 12 minutes for him to get off his chest what he needs to get off his chest on a particular track. And with there being 16 songs on this record, that runtime adds up to over 2 hours. So while I really do enjoy this album as a fan of Mark's recent work, people who are outside of the Kozelek loop may have a hard time connecting with this thing. Still though, for me personally, there are highlights abound on this thing. Instrumentally, on tracks like God Bless Ohio, which feature a very sad set of descending acoustic guitar chords and a very tight drum beat. The instrumental to Philadelphia Cop, which has more of a hip-hop flavor to it from its drum loops, which are very punchy, and it's a very deep, dark bass line. It's like a rap tune, but it's played at a slower, drearier pace. I also love the very wintry window sash Waits, which has some very icy guitar chords played throughout. Then there are other cuts like Bastille Day and I Love Portugal and Vague Rock Song, which seem intentionally hokey, kind of playful, a little warmer. And of course, a lot of these instrumentals, they don't just stick to one sound or style throughout. There are plenty of tracks that feature acoustic breakdowns where Mark either digresses from his many digressions throughout a single song, or he gives more detail to what he's singing or talking about on a track. Or the track Chili Lemon Peanuts, almost the entire second half of that track is this weird, spacey, ambient passage with these sad keyboards. Again, there's some good instrumental diversity across the record, but some important consistencies too. The fact that many of the tracks feel very linear, feel more like a musical foundation for Mark's spoken word or story. If there's any clear progression across the record, it's that as the album moves along, it's like Mark gets more and more meta with his lyrics. The song 70s TV show theme is so blatantly self-referential that I don't know, it's unique, as Mark is literally rattling off a bunch of TV shows from that decade whose theme songs or incidental music remind him of the very song that he's writing. Because there is kind of a funky drum beat and some persistent guitar soloing and some horns that work their way into the track, but there is kind of a messy stream of consciousness looseness to the cut that I don't know, that doesn't quite remind me of the music from that era. Lyrical highlights on this song include Mark talking about millennials not potentially getting the references that he's making on this song. There's a moment on the track where he says it reminds him of Barney Miller and it wasn't intentional. He's just trying to add another track to the album, some filler. And the song Vague Rock Song is exactly what Mark labels it as he sort of cycles through these nonsensical refrains urging people to sing along with his vague rock song. It's kind of a parody of the exact opposite type of tune he wants to write, or at least wanted to write for this album. He makes a similar point on the track Window Sash Waits, where right after sort of going into this obsession he has with true crimes, serial killers, Richard Ramirez, and this need that's driving him to go to this hotel connected with the unsolved death of Elisa Lam, he kind of trails off into these vague rock lyrics. Before he goes into them, he warns us that they're coming, and he sort of gives us a bunch of easy to digest refrains to, I guess, kind of soften the blow from all of these weird preoccupations that he has, that he sort of went into detail with for a majority of the track. Mark even visits the hotel he's alluding to on the track and goes even deeper into the Elisa Lam story. Like I said, Mark may be really long-winded on this record, but for me it's kind of entrancing just how obsessively he sticks to a topic on these songs. And the more detail he adds to a narrative that he's building on a track, the more compelling it becomes. What he's saying on a track becomes funnier, grimmer, or even sadder. Whether on a track it be him interacting with college kids on the Sarah Lawrence College song, asking them what they're studying, how much they're paying, a moment where he's reading a letter that he received from the promoter of the show, or going to Las Vegas to see a Manny Pacquiao fight that he lost a bet on, or a track where he's poking fun at phone-obsessed millennials, a moment on the same song where he's kind of going through this hilarious satirical conversation telling this snooty, oh, la, moron that he's a music journalist. And she's like, oh, you go to South by Southwest? He goes on to say he knows all the bands. He knows Dr. John Misty. That's some serious music nerd humor right there. Also a beautiful moment on the record where he's tributing a friend named Butch who passed away. This is probably the most detailed tribute he's given anyone on a song, as he goes into grave detail about Butch's many habits and personality quirks and Mark's personal interactions with him. At one point, Mark creates this funny fabricated murder story about this guy who kills a dude because his voice is really similar to Eric Clapton's. A moment where he says that in the future, when he does a show at Chapel Hill, he will invite all transgender people to come in for free and they can use whatever fucking bathroom they want because for him, it's about personal dignity and respect. He glorifies Portugal as an idyllic getaway from the insanity of the United States of America. And on the track Bergen to Trondheim, this is an incredibly unlikely but very essential track about the Pulse nightclub shooting, or at least Mark's reaction and feelings on that. This thing is a really odd, long, and emotionally complicated record, but I think it's also very raw and beautiful and personal and thoughtful and moving and super evocative too. I love the direction Mark took with the lyrics and took with the instrumentals on this record. I love that he didn't give up on some of the ideas that he had on universal themes. I think he improved on them greatly. And while I don't think this record is as widely accessible as Benji, I think in many respects it's every bit as good. I think what Mark has done here is pull together a boldly different and refreshing reinvention. Sure, there are a few points on the record where I think a point that Mark is trying to make or a joke that he's trying to make has gone on a little long or worn its welcome. Or Mark gets so meta on this record that it's hard not to roll your eyes at what he's doing at least a little bit. Sort of like how when Mark is singing about how his back catalog is on Amazon.com because this particular person who he's referencing said that he likes his older songs. But again, as I said earlier, this is really the strength of this album. Mark is just breaking the fourth wall so hard that he's made a really unique listening experience in the process. And not just lyrically, because, you know, the stories on this thing are supremely detailed, they're supremely intense, they're supremely engrossing, but I think the album is musically interesting too. I think Mark does a lot of cool things fusing these elements of hip-hop music, of rock music, of folk music into this linear and winding mix. I just have to give it to Mark Kozelek again, because deep into his career, again, he's coming out with an incredibly challenging, adventurous, and inventive album. I'm feeling a light to decent 9 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe. Please don't cry. Leave an angry comment if you're angry. And links next to my head that you should check out other videos and subscribe to the channel. Official website. You're the best. Sun Kil Moon. Common as light. Forever.